Welcome back to Season 2, or welcome to Season 2, I guess I should say, of 15 Minutes with Andy. We've had a little bit of time in between Season 1 and Season 2 as we paused and kind of reevaluated some things with guests in Season 1, and then actually seeking out guests with some stories to tell. And we're lining up some real good ones here for Season 2. If you haven't followed along, you can hear Season 1 guests on our YouTube page, 15 Minutes with Andy. And again, just want to give some background on that. We've had people that have reached out and said, well, wait a minute, these podcasts are like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour. The 15 minutes comes from everybody, in our opinion, deserving 15 minutes of fame that have these terrific stories to tell. So that's where the title came from. So our Season 2 theme is going to be like our Season 1 theme, and that's continuing with stories of hope and inspiration and definitely positivity, because that's something, the reason why we started this, one of the main reasons was we felt like that there wasn't enough positivity out in the world, and we wanted to try to infuse the world with positivity. So that's where this concept came up with. Our first guest here on Season 2 is Bryan High School junior Dylan Dominique. Hi, Dylan. How are you?
Good, Andy. How are you?
Thanks for doing this with us. A little background before we dive into the main part of your story. Born and raised here forever in Bryan, right?
Born in March of 2004 here in Bryan.
So take me back to, I guess, the part of the reason for your story and that we want to tell is you were diagnosed with something very early in life. I'll let you tell our listeners a little bit about that.
So July 1st of 2009, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Kind of just came upon as a surprise. Nobody in my family had type 1 diabetes in the past. I've had many grandparents, great-grandparents, great-uncles with type 2 diabetes, but nobody with type 1. So it kind of just came upon as a new challenge that hit me and my family, and we've been battling it ever since.
And you're very young, what, 5?
Yeah, I was 5 years old.
So what are your memories? Do you have a lot from that young, or when do you first remember knowing that you were a type 1 diabetes kid?
I remember the week up to being diagnosed, actually. I had gotten really sick. I had been losing a lot of weight, and I think I lost 15 pounds in 1 week, which at 5 years old, I don't have that much weight to lose at that point.
Yeah.
But I was really thirsty, and my mom decided, well, let's take him to the ER and see what they have to say. So I went to the ER. They sent me to Toledo's Children's Hospital, and that's where I came upon the diagnosis of being diabetic. But after that, just every year something new would happen. I mean, I don't really remember it that much, but every year technology would advance, or it seems like it'd get a little bit easier. And ever since then, I've been very fortunate with all the advancements that have happened. So
yeah, and boy, I got to believe, even when you don't remember necessarily everything that happened, you still knew that this was different from other kids, right?
Oh, yeah. And I think just accepting the fact that I'm different than everybody else, and I have to take one extra step when I sit down to eat to cover or bolus for my food, just learning that at a young age and that being ingrained has really helped me, even till today, with just having that mindset that there's one extra step. Stop, take the extra step, and then everything will be all right.
Okay. So what were the limitations? And for those that don't know, before we get any farther, what's the difference between being type 1 and type 2, and how that affects you?
So being in type 1, my pancreas doesn't produce insulin at all. So I have to wear an insulin pump on my side with a site port in my skin that puts the insulin in my body for me, where a type 2, I'm not great with like the differences, but you have to take like a pill to kind of like boost your pancreas to get it to produce a little bit more, is what I've been told. So I really don't know, to be honest with you, Andy, what the difference is, but that's just kind of what I know from hearing from family members and stuff.
Totally fine. So obviously this has changed the way you have to eat and take care of yourself. So how tough, I mean, you're 5, 6, 7 years old, now you're into your teen years. It's easier now the older you get, but what was your mindset when you're that young of an age and like you can have certain things, but you can't have certain things. Talk about that with your diet, if you would, Dylan.
It was very tough back then because I really didn't know any better to change the way I ate back then compared to what I do now. So a lot of that came from my parents just kind of having to fight me. And you can't have this at that time because then you have to give insulin. And at that time, we didn't want to give a lot because of how young I was. But today, it makes life so much easier if you clean up the way you eat with how your numbers will fluctuate. And I figured out that the more I watch what I eat and the healthier, I guess you could say it is, the easier it is to balance all my numbers and stuff like that. So I think back then it was definitely very hard because as a 5-6-year-old kid, you want to sit there, eat candy and cheese puffs on the couch, watch cartoons, when really I couldn't do that. I mean, I could do it, but I tried to refrain away from it at a young age because it would just make later in life so much easier with managing and balancing what I eat.
I'm sure there have been countless stories growing up. I mean, you've had and I'm sure they've ranged from all kinds of emotions. You have a funny story or two, and I'm sure there's been some pretty serious moments in there as well of dealing with this throughout the course of your life.
Yeah, so I guess a funny one I could say was the first time at school with my pump, everybody thought I had a DS on my side. So back then, that's when the DS was really cool. And everybody would call it they tell me to put my games away, like when it would beep in class, or we'd be out at recess or at lunch and I'd have to take it out or do something. And everybody was so fascinated that I had this thing on my side. And they thought it was like a phone or like a DS or whatever that was. And that really, just looking back on it, I mean, it's kind of funny. But even to today, like, people aren't educated enough about it to like notice it by the human eye that he's got diabetes. That's an insulin pump. Like, I still get it in class at school. They're in study hall. It'll go off and some kid will come up and he's like, what is that? Like, even umpires, like, they don't know. So they ask, and they feel really dumb when they ask because they'll tell me that. But I think that I just get a little chuckle out of it every time that happens. But I guess to go on the more scarier side, I was probably 10 or 11. I had a seizure in the middle of the night, and I woke up in the hospital not knowing where I was, like, completely at all. And I think that's the most recent scare that I've had that's really scared me. And I can't really speak for my mom and dad because every day scares them, I feel like, because anything's possible. But waking up in a hospital at 11 years old, staring at a ceiling with 30 people around you, being your family, that kind of just brings some scare into my mind, and that's really all I remember.
Yeah. Dylan, how has it affected you first as a, I guess, toddler/youth to now into your teen years? Where has it affected you the most? How have you been able to kind of walk that line of having whatever normal looks like a childhood and teen years to having to make all these adjustments?
I think just trying to keep that mindset that I'm no different than the kid to my left or the kid to my right has kind of been my motto, and trying to keep that in my mind as I walk through the hallways at school, that my buddies on the football team are no different than me only because I have something in my side. And it's helped having friends around me that have helped me. I've stayed in my head about how everything's all right, like, you're no different than us, just keep being you. But definitely when I was younger, there definitely was a sense that I was different than everybody else because, again, back then I didn't know any better. I was 7, 8 years old. I was dealing with this disease that I never thought I would have to deal with. My parents never thought we would have to deal with. So really it's just having that mindset that you're no different than the kid to your left or the kid to your right. Excuse me. But I think just keeping that has helped me fight through the normalcy and staying on that line of being as normal as everybody else. But I think everybody's unique in their own way. And my uniqueness comes from a disease that allows me to carry a pump on my side and have an app on my phone that tells me what my blood sugar is. And that's kind of the positive I try to take out of it, that's my uniqueness, and that's different than somebody else. So and for those that aren't, maybe this is a good time to kind of interject here, all the stuff that you either are involved with now, whether it be sports or other extracurriculars and stuff that you've been involved with through the years, you've
been able to, I guess, keep that normalcy alive, right? Because it hasn't, maybe, I'm sure it's limited you to some degree, but not limited you to what you want to try to tackle, whether it be this sport, that sport, or any other extracurricular.
So I've always been a sports kid growing up. I tried to play everything I could when I was younger, and my parents tried to not let diabetes hold me back from that. So staying on that line of normalcy of still being able to go outside at recess and play football with my friends, or even competitively playing at that point. But I think just trying to, again, keep that mindset that I'm no different than everybody else, even in sports. I mean, yes, it holds me back all the time. And you can ask anybody when diabetes gets in the way of, let's say, baseball, for instance, which is my favorite thing on this earth. I get pretty upset about it. But, again, it's helped with coaches being in my ear that it's all going to be okay, you're fine, just take a deep breath and relax. It's something that I just have to deal with. And it's no different than somebody getting hurt all the time, which, I happen to have that happen too. So, and diabetes plays a role in that. My bones don't heal as fast as everybody else's do. So just knowing that diabetes plays into so much that happens in my extracurricular activities in sports like football and baseball it's tough, but just trying to stay on that line of I'm no different than anybody else. I'm not the only diabetic out here that is playing sports, and we can do this. It's a battle together. And I look to pro athletes a lot because Mark Andrews is a tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, type 1 diabetic. I mean, he's one of the top tight ends in the National Football League. That just gives me a boost of confidence that we can do this even with having this, and trying to fulfill my dreams of playing baseball at the next level. That's kind of boosted me that way, even showing diabetes can get in the way of that. So,
Dylan, you've talked about mom and dad, and obviously you have a brother and a sister and other grandparents and other family members, extended family. So from you've seen them deal with stuff, and you've mentioned with that a little bit about how's that been, kind of watching, knowing you're dealing with it, but also seeing what mom and dad and siblings and everybody else are dealing with.
They care more than anybody in the world. They sometimes care more than me, which sounds bad, but my mom and dad have been there since day one. The day I was in the hospital, mom and dad have been right by my side, and I give them a lot of credit because I get a little moody sometimes, and with having diabetes and the mental side of that, they end up having to deal with because that's how my emotions reflect. But I give them a lot of credit, to my grandparents too. I mean, my grandma, Grandpa Dominic, and Hallett, of course. I see them a lot because they live in town and they come to all the baseball games, and them checking in on me, texting me throughout the day, how's everything going with your numbers and all that. But I would say my brother and sister, as much as I probably wouldn't say this to anybody else, but they help so much. Playing high school sports with my brother, he's always checking in on me, seeing how I'm doing. If I do go low in the middle of a game and he sees me off to the side getting my snack, he always comes over and checks on me, make sure I'm doing okay.
I mean, playing with your sibling, to interject quickly, that's got to be a great thing to begin with. But then to have this connection, even more so.
It's awesome getting to play with Carter. Him and I have dreamed of this since we were younger, going out to Ray Sumter Field, one of the nicest fields in Northwest Ohio, playing the game that we love together. It's been a dream of mine. I can't speak for him, but it's been a dream of mine since we were about 6th, 7th, 8th grade. But then having this connection on a deeper level just makes it so much more special, knowing that if something happens to him, through this connection, I'm there for him, or if I'm dealing with my issues, he's always there to check on me. And I think it gives mom and dad a little cushion to kind of sit back and know that Carter's in the dugout. He knows what's happening. Carter's on the sideline with me. He knows what's happening. If anything were to happen, Carter's there. So I think Carter's played a huge role in that. And then my sister, she'll text me during the day, ask me how my numbers are doing if she sees them in the office because I'm low, or if I'm having a bad day on the baseball field because my blood sugars are going low, she'll send me a text, or even just if anything in general is happening. She's I always call her my second mom because she thinks she is. She's 13 going on 35. So
I was thinking to myself,
special.
Dylan, as you're talking about this, is that they had to be trained right along with everybody else, and they're younger than you, so at a younger age.
Yeah, My brother learned a lot faster than my sister did, because 2009 of July, my sister was like 6 months old at that time. So really, she didn't really know what was going on, obviously. But it's crazy how educated my brother is about it, and how much he's learned with me right along the way. I mean, obviously, I learn things more in depth because I'm the one that deals with it. I sit through the doctor's appointments. I do all of that. But Carter, he can change a site for me if I need it. He can change my insulin if I need him to. Like, just those little things that go such a long way to help me in my day, that he's been educated throughout the day of how I react to certain blood sugar levels, what to eat, when to eat it if I'm low. And it's been truly a blessing to have him kind of right along the way with me, just kind of learning as I go too.
You mentioned your diet. What's an absolute no-no? No matter how bad you might want it, is there an absolute no-no for you?
Really, there's not. I really eat whatever I want, which I can't eat whatever I want. I try to stay away from like the sugary candies as much as I can, because that can fluctuate it a lot. But I mean, like every kid, like you're hanging out with your buddies, they want to have a Mountain Dew. Like, I can't have that, so that's when I refrain to water. Sometimes I'll drink one just because I don't like to be the odd guy out, which plays back into the normalcy of things. But like regular Pops and Gatorade are really a tough one because there's so much sugar in those. But that's really, I mean, chocolate and like just candy type foods is what I try to stay away from as much as I can. But like when I go to a basketball game, it's all they got to eat, so that's what I eat.
There's not much good to eat.
There's not much really I can get out of that. So
we've kind of touched on you're a junior. Have you gotten to that point where you're thinking about next level beyond high school graduation? You briefly touched on it, what you want to do and what the dream is, but where would you like to go? What's kind of the pathway for you? And does diabetes and this diagnosis play into a role of anything, what you want to do career-wise beyond?
So, I mean, obviously I talked earlier about the dreams to play college baseball, but if that doesn't happen, I just want to go to college, probably major in something sports management, something like that. But I've been looking into it, like diabetes really doesn't play a role in any of that. I mean, obviously it's going to, because I could wake up before an exam or something like that and be low and maybe have to take it at a different time. And those are just obstacles in the road that I'm dealing with even now in high school that could get in the way of my future and trying to get to that level. But diabetes is just another medical thing that everybody, I mean, you can't really oddball us out. So, I mean, there's other people that deal with medical illnesses that are making it very far and being very successful, and that's my goal is to attack this medical illness that I have, and also attack what's next ahead of me and getting a good job and starting a family and stuff like that. So I'm really excited.
Since you've been diagnosed, have there been people, let's say younger, just use that as an example, that know that, okay, Dylan Dominique has it, and they've reached out to either you or mom and dad because their child or their sibling, whatever it might be, they're dealing, what are some, is it like a pay it forward type thing now?
Actually, my little cousin was diagnosed a couple of years ago when he was 3, and just kind of being there for him and being a role model for him and showing him that this doesn't stop us from doing anything is kind of what I've put my focus towards, because I know the position that his mom and dad are in, and my parents know the position that his mom and dad are in, that it's tough the first few years, and especially with him being that young, because he doesn't understand, and he won't really start to take care of himself until he's 7, 8, 9, 10 like I was. So just kind of learning what I've learned from my mistakes and passing that on to them and saying, okay, here's what you should do in this situation, or here's what you should eat when you're low, or just kind of be there for him, being his role model, I guess you could say, has kind of been my focus through since he's gotten it a couple of years ago, which I'm pretty proud of myself for that, because I know it's going to be tough on him, because there's days that it's even tough on me still. It's mentally dragging sometimes, to say the least, but it definitely helps knowing that I'm doing it a little bit for him, but also for myself a lot too, and my family and my parents, which makes them proud. So
very cool. Well, I've got a few questions. We kind of call this our speed round. For those that listened in on season 1, these are just kind of short answer type things. If you feel like you want to expand on any of the answers that I ask you, and I can cross off one because I've asked you, although profession, you said sports, in some sports management, something would be the profession you're going to choose. So I guess I'll lead off with what's your favorite word?
Oh. Can I go least favorite?
You can go. That was my next question. So if you want to go.
I'm going to go least favorite here. I hate the word weakness. I really hate the word weakness because I feel like yes, people say you have a weakness, but you're still strong in that area. Like for me, like somebody could say my weakness is my injuries, but no, that's just made me mentally stronger than this guy or this guy or this guy. And I feel like that's when somebody doesn't do something right, they say that's their weakness. No, that's not their weakness. They're strong in that, just not as strong as you are. So that's kind of how I try to put my view on that word and why I dislike it so much.
Okay. So that kind of goes hand in hand with a favorite aspect of the word is strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Sound or noise that you love? Can be anything.
Sound or noise that I love? I love the sound of the crack of a wood bat. Like, it seems odd, but being a baseball guy, there's no better sound than, I mean, you've probably heard it before, when it just cracks. Or the snatch of the leather of a mitt. Like, that just satisfies me in the weirdest way possible. I could listen to it on loop for hours.
Okay. Sound or noise you hate then?
I hate, like, when you scratch metal on like a glass plate, when it like screeches, or like when you nails on a chalkboard. Absolutely hate that sound.
Okay. So the last question is, this is kind of a real big picture question, and you're the let me think about this. You're our youngest podcast guest right now. So others have kind of been able to answer it because they've gotten certain amount of years through life.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is, I don't think it is, because you're a pretty intelligent kid, so I don't think this is going to be. But as you work your way through life and the journey, student to career to father, husband, and everything that you want to be, how would you like to be remembered eventually when it's all said and done down the road? I guess this is more of a Dylan Dominique person question, right?
Yeah. The guy that wants the best for everybody else. I don't want to put myself before others just because of what I've had to go through, but definitely wanting to be remembered as somebody who went out of their way to make sure somebody else had something good for them, or if somebody's having a bad day, going out of my way to just make sure that they know everything's going to be all right, because I've been to the lowest of lows days with dealing what I deal with, and I just hurt seeing other people like down like that. So just making sure that everybody's okay before myself, because I can always have time to make sure I'm all right and some other people don't. So I think that if I could be remembered by any way, shape, or form, I think that would be the main reason I'd want.
That's a really cool way to think about things, too. Very unselfish, too. I appreciate that answer.
Try to be sometimes.
Well, and we all have our moments, right?
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, it should be noted to people that are listening to the podcast, you've mentioned your siblings. We should make note that you're the smarter of the Dominic boys when it comes to the college teams, right?
Oh, of course.
Because Carter is somewhere down in that Columbus market fan.
He'll learn on September 27th. He'll learn.
And Dylan, a Notre Dame fan. So that's why. And Dad and I have talked Notre Dame a lot through the years as well. Hey, Dylan, thanks for taking time to spend some time with us here to talk about your journey. You know what? One last question as we wrap up. If somebody's listening to this, let's say they are a parent with a child that is diabetic, or somebody that's listening that's diabetic and just got diagnosed. Maybe we have somebody that's going to stumble across this podcast. What advice would you give to them, having dealt with it now for a better part of 12 years?
I would say just there's so many things that I've learned over the years, but just stay focused on the present. Just health comes first before everything else. That's one thing I've learned over the years is my health is my main priority. Yes, I want to partake in other activities, but if my health is not okay, then you can't do that because your body won't function right or you won't feel good or anything like that. So my main advice would just be health is priority. That's one thing I've tried to adapt over the years, and I'll just use sports as an example because my body can't perform at the highest level if my diabetes isn't under control. So if I can get that in check first, then I can see success in my activities that I take part in. But health has got to be your main priority, and maintaining that and really focusing on keeping it in check. So.
All right. Dylan, thanks for being with us. Best of luck in your junior year, your senior year, and all throughout life. I have no worries about you being successful in whatever path you choose.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Appreciate that. Dylan Dominique, our guest, Season 2 rolling now for 15 Minutes with Andy. Have a great day. Make it a great day. And thanks for listening here to this segment and this guest on 15 Minutes with Andy.